Are you I can't hear you, but it doesn't show that you're muted.
Okay, that's because I have another mute on the mic I use, so I could. And I'm sorry. So I'm back and I'm unmuted. Who's got questions I could answer? Remember, everyone got different questions. So if you ask me something you don't know, probably somebody else doesn't know it, and they may not even know they don't know it. So is there anything on the quiz that surprised you or confused you? Anything you want to talk about?
There was one question that I didn't understand what it was asking. It was
Okay.
a true or false. It said adding a seventh changes the function of must chords.
Must. Oh, I'll give you credit for it. The word is most chords. So it's
Okay.
not must. So let's ask that question. If we had a seventh, do we change the function of most chords? Yes or no? Give me a thumbs up if you think the answer is no. Yeah, and that's the correct answer. The seventh, it sort of changes the function of a tonic sometimes because it's harder to think of a tonic as a rest chord with a seventh on it sometimes. But every other chord is really the same chord. A 2-7 functions just like a 2 chord. A 3-7 functions just like a 3 chord. So I will give you credit, Leslie. If you don't see it in a couple days, send me a text and yell at me. But I'll give you credit for that because it was a typo. It should be most chords. No wonder you did not understand it. Uh, yeah, one letter makes a world of difference. Okay, so good. We understand the concept. Anybody else?
I have a question.
Yes.
So, the question was, which of the following is a correct name for a diminished chord with the minor seventh?
Yes.
And I put full diminished, and apparently that was wrong.
Yeah, so if you have a diminished chord with a diminished seventh, that's a full diminished. And a diminished chord with a minor seventh is a half diminished. So in a major key, the 7-7 chord is half diminished. In a minor key, it's a full diminished chord. So let me show you if I can show you the difference between those. Okay, let me get a page of Finale open. So if we look at this page of Finale, and let me also make sure my audio is correctly set up. Sorry. Yeah, it is. Miracle. If I write in C major a 7-7 chord, that chord's going to look like this. It's going to look like this. And if you look at this chord, the B to D is a minor third, and the B to F is a tritone. So that's a diminished chord. But the B to A, we know that that's just a minor seventh. Here, I'll write it here so we can see it by itself. That's a minor seventh. You know, A to B is a whole step. We reverse it, becomes a minor seventh. So it's a diminished chord but with a minor seventh. Now, if I go into C minor, I've got an E flat, a B flat, and a B flat, E flat, and A flat. The B flat I changed to a natural to make it a leading tone. So we keep the same chord underneath, B natural, D, and F, but the A now becomes a flat. So what happens if I take any minor interval and I make it smaller? Because an interval is either perfect or it's major and minor. So if I take a major interval, make it bigger, it becomes augmented. If I take a major interval, make it smaller, it becomes minor. If I take the minor interval, make it smaller, it becomes diminished. And so this is a diminished seventh because it's smaller even than the minor seventh. And then this chord here is a diminished seventh, a diminished chord with a diminished seventh. We call that fully diminished. So the leading tone chord in minor is fully diminished, and the leading tone chord in major is a diminished chord with a minor seventh. That's called a half diminished. You could also call it diminished minor chord, or you call it a diminished chord for this one, but that's very awkward. So usually people will say half diminished or full diminished. Did I make that clear? Okay. Any other questions, guys? None? You know, you should ask questions because otherwise I'm going to lecture for a while. All right. So here we go at the beginning of Finale. Let's look. I'm going to try and block things out just so you don't get confused by too much information on the screen. So I'm just going to block a lot of stuff out. Hold on. Here we go. There we go. So we just look at 2 measures at a time. This is what we've been studying up till now, right? I have any chord here. It doesn't matter what it was. I chose a 5 chord for this example. Becomes a temporary tonic. We call it tonicization. It's been tonicized. It's not really a modulation. We don't stay in that tonic, but we act like it's tonic. So the chord before, we make it a major chord, and we get a 5 of 5. In this case, it's of 5 because it's going to a 5 chord. If it was a 2 chord here, it'd be 5 of 2. If it was a 3 chord here, it'd be 5 of 3. But whatever it is, it's a circle progression. Go up a fourth in the bass. This chord has to be major to make it function like a dominant, and it acts like a dominant of our tonicized chord, which acts like a tonic in a very short amount of time. So we know this, but have you noticed that we've only done these things in root position? What? Yes, only in root position. And of course, all of these chords can exist in inversion, but we know what a 5 looks like in inversion. We know what a 1 looks like. 5 of 5 is no surprise. So to get you ready for it, let me just remind you of a few things. The leading tone, which is the sharp note. Remember, it's not a leading tone in the key of C, but in the key of G, F sharp's a leading tone. Whenever we sharp a note, it acts like a leading tone. It wants to go up that half step. Because it's in an inner voice, if we need a complete chord, it can drop a minor third, but that's the only choice it has. It really wants to go up, or it could drop a minor third. So that voice leading is determined. Usually, if we're in root position, we like to double the root, which is the bass. You see, I doubled it here, and then here I've doubled it the tenor, and then here I've doubled it the soprano. And we have to change voices if the note moves, because otherwise you get parallel octaves. That's standard voice leading. If we're in an inversion, we can double whatever the bass note is, which is no longer the root, or the soprano note, as long as we don't double any note with an accidental, because that acts like a leading tone, and we never, ever double a leading tone. So those are our rules. And you notice I've tried to keep it in close position, which means that my tenor is within an octave of my soprano. Can't always do that, but we try. In fact, you can't always do all these rules, but we try, and then we sort of have a hierarchy. So what happens if I put that first chord in inversion? Well, it's nothing magic. I mean, this is stuff we've all learned to do. So you look at the chord, I put the third of the chord, the F sharp, instead of the D in the bass. So F sharp's now in my bass. So I've still got the D, the root of the chord is doubled because I doubled my soprano. That's the root of my chord. I've got a D, F sharp, A. The F sharp wants to go up the half step. Everybody else wants to move as little as possible. And look at that. It's just like, it's just no surprise. The only thing is that's my leading tone in the actual key. It wants to go to C, which I can do, but if I do, I can't get a G in this chord. So I'm allowed to drop that a third if it's not in the soprano. So I did that to make a complete chord. So an inversion of a 5 of 5 is no big deal. You just treat it like you would treat any other chord in inversion and just follow the voice leading. So far, do we have any questions? Okay, so far there are no questions. So now we're going to take it a step further. I've got a couple things to show you, and each one's just a little different. Now what I've done is I've taken my 5 chord, but I've made it a 5-7 chord. Again, we can do this. We can put a 7th on any chord, but a 5-7, a dominant 7th, a major chord with a minor 7th, that's got real power. That's going to drive me to my next chord. So I've done the same thing. I've taken my 5 chord, I've tonicized it as if it's major, as if it's a G major, and then I've got my 5 of chord, and I've just added a 7th to it. So it's D, F sharp, A, and C. The only thing this does to change anything is that the C is a 7th. It's got to go downward by step. So the C is going downward by step. The F sharp wants to go to the G, but it'll be an incomplete chord, so it drops the minor third. We have a circle progression, so my root goes up. There's no doubling in this chord because there are 4 notes in it. When I get to this chord, I've doubled the root, the bass like you expect, and double the bass like you expect. So no surprise in that. We just have to remember 7th goes downward by step. So far, any questions? This is sort of review, but I don't want to throw a curve at you on an exam. So what happens if I take an inversion of this chord? I've only done one example because we'll probably do some others as practice. But if I do one inversion, I'm going to make this a 6-5 chord. In other words, I'm going to put the F sharp in the bass, first inversion, and see what happens. So I take the same chord. It's a D chord, but I put the F sharp in the bass. So it's D, F sharp, A, and C. So there's my C, A, and D. And just like before, my leading tone wants to go up. My 7th, that's the 7th chord, wants to go down. So we do that. We end up on a 5 chord, and the 5 chord takes you straight to the 1 chord. Look at that. Just like in the movies. That's a 5-6-5. If I had done a second inversion, I'll just quickly show you that it's really not different. I'll just drag some notes around. So second inversion, my bass would have been an A natural instead. And the alto would then have had to be my F sharp because I have to replace it. Still no problem, right? The F sharp's my leading tone, it goes up, the seventh goes down. There's no difference. So in this case, instead of being a 6-5, it'd be a 4-3 here, a 5-4-3. So we can put these secondary dominants in any inversion, even when they have sevenths. So that's like all we need to know there. Again, is this all clear? This should be clear in the sense it's a review of a couple different chapters, but it's a new context. So I want to just see. Anyone have any questions about it? Okay, no questions. So now let's do one more oddity. Remember, I can make a 5 of something else. So I've got a 2 chord going to a 5 chord to a 1. Instead of doing a 5 of 5, I could do the 5 of the 2 and then have the 2 go to 5. So to do that, I just have to tonicize the 2 chord. And to do that, I just, okay, so if 2 it acts as a 1 chord, then I need an A major chord to be my 5 chord. And so I put that in here. There's a 5 of 2, the A major chord going to 2, going to a 5, going to 1. Again, nothing new there. I've just tonicized a different chord. So the C sharp is now my leading tone. It goes up. In this case, I'm in root position, so I have a circle progression. Nothing surprising there. So that's all well and good. That's easy. So let's now talk about what happens if we want to do a different kind of dominant. And let's look at this chord here. That chord there we just were writing about, that's my half diminished 7th chord. Well, let me ask you it's a different way. I just gave you the answer, but I'll ask a different way. Everybody, write to me on chat what the 2 basic diminished 7th chord, not diminished, dominant chords are. The 2 chords that have dominant function. There's 2 chords in a major or minor scale that have dominant function that want to go to 1. Type those 2 chords to me in chat. Yeah, so it's the 5 and the 7, but particularly it's the diminished version of the 7. So in minor, we have to sharp the root. But yes, it's the leading tone chords, the 5 and the 7. And since the way we emphasize a chord is to precede it with its own dominant, we can precede it with a 7 chord just as easily as we can precede it with a 5 chord. So I'm going to go a little further down here and start from scratch and just show you this. So let's say my original was a 5-7 of 5 to 1 in the key of C. And I'm going to write that in here like we did before. So I've got a 5-7. Let's just do a 6, that in the bass. And that's going to go, no, I don't like that in the bass. 5-7, let's make, 5-7 of 5D, sorry. Yeah, better. D, and to a 5, to a 1. To a 1. Okay, probably be better to do that. And then the top voice, this is a D, F sharp, A, and C. So I need an F sharp in there. And that's going to go to here. The D, I'm going to go to a G chord, right? So I need that. And then that's going to take me back to the C. Okay. So this chord here is the 5-7 of 5, D, F sharp, A, and C. It's got a 7 in it. Now, if I wanted to do a 7 of 5, what would that be? What would the notes be in the key of G? What would be a 7th degree? Who wants to tell me in the chat what notes would be included in a 7 chord? And I've got to get to my chat again so I can see you. There we go. What would the notes be? So I want a 7 chord in the key of G. One correct answer. Okay, I'll tell you the rest. Not everyone will send me answers. Okay, so here's the G is my tonic now. So my 7th is going to be the F sharp. 7 is going to be the note right below 8. Tonic is 1 and 8. So we know it's an F sharp chord, and we know in the key of G, it's just going to be in the key signature. So it's F sharp, A, C, and if you want the 7th, an E. Now look at the magic. If you look at the 5-7 chord, and you take out the root. I'm just going to take out the root of the chord here because I can. Whoops, I took out the whole chord, sorry. Take out the root of the chord. I get F sharp, A, and C. The 7 chord is simply the 5 chord minus its root. That's all there is to it. And so if I want to make this a 4-note chord, I have to double something. I could double the A in the bass and tenor, but doubling the soprano when you're in inversion's better. You never double the altered tone. It acts as a leading tone. It's going to cause parallels. So probably put a C in the tenor. Whoops, that's not a C. Try that. And there's my chord. So if you want to have a 7 chord, all you do is take the 5 chord and drop out the bass, and that will be your 7 chord. It's automatic. Or you could just figure it out. The G is tonic. 7 has got to be the F sharp. It's a half step below. F sharp, A, C, and there's your 7 chord. So then if we want to make it a 7-7, well, we know what our root is. It's F sharp, A, C. And what's the next note? Just go up in thirds. It's an E. So I got 2/3. One of those guys has got to be an E. It doesn't matter which one. I'll make this guy the E, so we're in close spacing. And there's the E, and the E has to go down to the D because 7s have to go down by step. And that's it. There's a 5-7 of 5. So how do we write this? Let me notate it for you. Now notice I always put a little, I tell you what the key is, because Roman numerals don't mean anything like keys. So we put it in there with a thing. If I don't have the 7th, this is simply a 7, whoops, small letters because it's a diminished chord, a 7 diminished of 5 going to a 5 going to a 1. Now if I have this 7th, because this is a half diminished 7th because it's a major and I took it off the major, then I would have this with a slash through the O and the 7th. I'd have to put a little slash through this O, or I'd have to write diminished and then the 7th. But even so, it's just a 7-7 of 5 going to 5 going to 1. So that's pretty straight ahead. Any questions on using the 7 instead of the 5? Now there are 2 caveats. So I've got to give you the 2 caveats and then we can go straight to practice. All right. Let's pretend instead of going to the 5, I'm going to the 2 chord. So let me set this up where I'm just going to put a rest in here so you can see what I'm talking about. I'm trying to block off so you don't have too much to look at. I hope that's not too confusing for you. So if I've got, it's again C major. If I've got a, come on you. Thank you. If I've got a 2 chord going to a 5 chord going to a 1. And I'll just fill in some voices here. 2 chord probably I'll do again a rest here because I'm going to fill in another chord. Probably something like that. You're going to be doubling. The D is going to stay a D. I don't know where that A is going to go. We'll make something up right now. And there. And then I got put in a tenor note. This is just boring stuff because I'm just filling in notes and chords. As long as I don't have parallels, it's all good. Let's do a G on that guy. And then this guy, I don't have an E, so he's going to drop to the E. Okay. Not the best voice leading, but again, you see I kept in close position. There are no 7ths to worry about. I made it a point to double the bass, always in a different voice, so I know I don't have parallelisms. So I got a 2 to a 5 to a 1. Now that 2 is a D minor chord. So if I'm trying to do a leading tone of the D minor, in the key of D minor, C would be 7, but C is not a leading tone chord. So what is the root of my leading tone chord if I want to make D feel like tonic? What's my root? Throw it in the chat, guys. And I'll try and get to chat so I can see. There you are. I got one correct answer. Everyone type an answer so I know if you understand or not. Nobody's typing. Okay, so there's confusion. All right, it's the 7th, right? So what's the 7? Well, the 7, if D is the root. That's 8. So 7 would be a C, but we don't use natural minor because then you have a whole step. You don't have a leading tone. So we always sharp the 7. We use harmonic minor. So C sharp is my root. So even though D minor natural doesn't have a C sharp, we're going to use the C sharp because we need it to be a leading tone chord. It's not just any 7. It's got to be the leading tone, the 7 diminished. So it's based on the C sharp. Now D minor is F. If you look at that scale, it's based on F. It's got a B flat. So when I add the other notes, I'm going to put them just in so you can see where they are. I get that. And as you'd expect, that chord, because it's a minor chord, that's a fully diminished chord. Whereas the chord I did over here going to major was a half diminished chord. That the 7th is a minor second, is a minor 7th away. This 7th is a diminished 7th away. So if I'm trying to voice that, how am I going to do that? Well, let's see. Closest to D, I'll put an E, B flat in the soprano and alto. Let's see. E there. Whoops. Try that again. E, B flat. And then that leaves the only note left is the G. So I'll put the G in the tenor. And there's perfect voice leading. 7th goes down. If you look at the tritone, because 7th chords have tritones, the C sharp goes up, the G goes down. That's one tritone. And fully diminished, you've got another tritone as well. But you got that will function beautifully. That will function beautifully. So we've got a full diminished 7 going to, so that's a 7 of 2, which becomes a 2 goes to 5 and 5 goes to 1. Before I give the final caveats, who's got questions? Clearly there were questions. Who's got questions? Okay. Let me also just review this idea of going backwards on the scale. It just seems to confuse people. So let me just put a scale here. Whoops. We have numbers. We can name it, right? The name is tonic, supertonic, median, subdominant, dominant, submedian, leading tone, tonic. If we want to name them. But if we number them, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that last note is 8. It's also 1. C is C. But that's 8. It's also 1, which means if you want to get to 7, you could count upward from 1, but it's easier to count downward from 8. So if I need a 7 chord and I know what my tonic is, you just go down. Now, if I want it to be a leading tone chord, I know I have to go down a half step. So anytime I have a tonic and I want to write a leading tone chord, I go down a half step. That's 7. Tonic is 8. Half step below is 7 as a leading tone. If I go a full step below, I'm no longer a leading tone. So all you have to do to find any 7 chord is go down from the chord you tonicize, go down half a step, 8 down to 7. Just like if we go to minor, which is 6, the relative minor, we go down 3, a minor third, because 6, 7, 8, 8, 7, 6. You have to go down 3 notes. You could go up 6, but it's harder. We just have to get used to the fact that that's both a 1 and an 8. So anytime you see tonic, count backwards. Make your life easy. People seem to have trouble with that. You know, I was a math physics major. It doesn't faze me at all. I'm in base 8. I'm fine. But for you guys who have a little trouble, it's still not hard to go 8, 7, 6. You know, we can do that. We have that technology. We have fingers. 8, 7, 6, 5. We could do that. Okay? So that makes all this stuff a lot easier. All right. Who's got questions? Who's got questions? And then I'll give the final caveat. Okay. Final caveat. And then I'm going to have you do some practicing on your own. We got lots of stuff to practice. Oh my gosh, yes. So let's start by saying that in a major key, this is what Sophie asked at the beginning. A 7 chord is usually a half diminished chord. In fact, if you're a diatonic, if you don't put accidentals, it's always a half diminished chord. And if you're in minor, the leading tone chord, which means we're in harmonic minor, is always a fully diminished chord. So you would think that if I have a minor chord that I'm tonicized, I will always use the full diminished. If I have a major chord that's tonicized, I'll always use a half diminished. But you would be wrong, because that would require logic, and music is an art, and it's not logic. So let me just say that you could use either half diminished or full diminished. They will all resolve to wherever you're going. It's fine. Whatever sounds right to your ear, whatever fits the key signature, half diminished could go to a minor chord, full diminished could go to a major. I will tell you that composers, for reasons that will not be explained till the second year, prefer to use the fully diminished. It's a little more powerful. So composers will often use a fully diminished, even if they're resolving to a major chord. But it turns out it will work regardless. You could have a full diminished or a half diminished, regardless of what chord you're going to. That happens to both. So that's just a caveat. So that if your intellect gets in there and you say, but it's in that minor key, shouldn't it be? Doesn't matter. Just get the root right and put a diminished 7 in there. And when in doubt, use a fully diminished 7. You could never be wrong. Okay, any questions now? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the whiteboard and I'm going to put a progression on the whiteboard. Let's see. Let's share the whiteboard. There we go. So I'm going to put a progression, and that progression is simply going to be a 2-chord. Let's do it this way. I had a better one here. A 6 to a 2 to a 5 to a 1. Okay? Yeah. Okay. And what I'd like you to do is start, and you'll put this thing first in 4-part harmony, but just as it is. So we have a model. You're going to use that model. So write it. You're going to rewrite it. You're not going to just change on it because you have to use it in various ways. But just write that chord progression. Key of C is fine. But just write that chord progression in 4 parts. And the only thing that's guaranteed is the bass line because there's no inversions. Everything else you can voice any way you want. Let me make sure I wrote it correctly on the whiteboard again. Where's that? Where is that whiteboard? Come on. I can't see my whiteboard. What are you? There it is. Okay, I got it right. Let me turn off the sound. Hold on a second. Does everyone have the chord progression done? Yes, no? Give me a thumbs up when you finish the chord progression. Work out this progression, guys. Okay, I'm going to show you mine, and if you're still working, copy mine if you need to, because we're going to need to use this progression. So first of all, I just put the baseline in. Remember, a key of C, a 6. Well, what's a 6? If C is 8, 8, 7, 6. I know what my base note is. C is 1, there's your 2. C is 1, 2, 3, 4, there's your 5, and there's your 1. C, G, D, A. So that tells me what my baseline is. I stick that in first. Now I've got to do some doubling, I know that, but basically my chord is ACE. So ACE, one of those has to double the bass. So I put it in closed position. Don't really care what my soprano note is. I just put them in order. And then I need a DFA. So there's my DFA. Remember, I have to double a different note. So the alto doubled the bass and the soprano does, but I just kept close position. And there's my G chord and there's my C chord. And if you're missing any of those notes, fill them in now. Because what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to take this 2 chord and just change it to a 5 of 5. It's a simple operation. It takes a one-step operation. So do that and then give me a thumbs up, and then I will do it. Okay, one's done. Two are done. While we're working at it, somebody tell me, and 3 are done. Somebody tell me what do I have to do to make that chord function like a dominant? Just say it out loud, somebody. Go ahead, say it out loud. Go ahead, what do you? What do I have to do to this chord to make it 7-2 chord, make it feel like a dominant chord?
Don't you have to raise the third of the chord?
Exactly. Just turn it into major. So that's exactly right. Turn it to major, create a leading tone. Kaboom. I'll just put it in. Boom. That's it. Now it's a 5 of. Now that's it. That's all I did. Changed one note by a half a step, and now it's a 5 of 5. Okay. Make it a 5, 7 of 5. You may have to change more than this chord because the 7 has to come downward by step. So I'll have to do some adjusting. So see if you can make it a 5, 7 of 5. And I'll give you a hint. You've got 2 Ds there if you've doubled the bass. So one of those Ds is going to change and become the 7th. And it ain't going to be the bass. So there's a hint. Okay? All right. Got one done. Two done. Three done. Yeah, and I won't ask this because it's hard to describe it, but I take the double note, I just turn it to the 7th. To do that, I went 8 down to 7, right? The top note is doubling the bottom, it's an 8. I just make it a 7. Now, the trouble is the 7 has to go downward by step. So that means that the soprano has to come down, and because that gives us an incomplete chord, I'm going to change some other notes too. I could just leave it like that, leave the alto there, but I think I'm going to make it a little nicer. I think that's nicer. Now my leading tone drops. Oh, that's supposed to be a G. Didn't go all the way down. Unsuccessful. So my 7th goes down. So that's the only big change when we do this. We add the 7th. That's easy. But we have to make sure that the 7 goes downward by step. It really wants to do that. So I had to revoice my next chord. No big deal. Everyone still understand? But now I gave you the wrong assignment. I turned this into a 5-7 chord. I don't want it to be a 5-7 of 5. I want it to be a leading tone chord of 5, so a 2 diminished chord of 5. Don't worry about 7ths. We have to take this root out. How do we change it? How do we make this a 5-7 of 5? Go ahead and give 7-7. Not 7. I lied to you. A leading tone, just a 7 of 5. How do we do that? See if you can figure it out. You may have to adjust some notes. Give me a thumbs up when you get there. This has some more adjusting. It'll take a little longer. Got 1. Okay, excellent. So let's see if you came up with the same answer I did. There's 2 ways to think about this. You can look at this G as 1 or 8 and go down and realize you need F sharp to be 7. Go down a half step. Or you could look at your 5-7 chord and just take out the root. Either way, that gives you the rough draft. That tells you what's in the chord. So I just went down half a step, boom, or I create root. But the trouble now is I've doubled the leading tone. So one of those notes has to change. I can either stay in root position and change the F sharp, or I can move the F sharp to a different note. And either one works. If I move the F sharp to an A, then I get parallel octaves, so I'd have to do some more work. I'll probably leave it in root position because it's easier to just change this F sharp to a C. It's just less changes. Doesn't really matter. Because now the C goes up to the D, the F sharp goes up to the G, the A. That's not terrible, except you really want you want the tritones to go in opposite directions, but you've got a F sharp and C as a tritone. And then this one has to go the opposite direction, so it's not parallel octaves. That works. I would also probably, to make things smooth, move that guy up an octave. And there you have it. That's one version of the 7 chord, but I could have also put it in inversion and kept this F sharp in the tenor. You could have been right either way. That would have worked too. So I can show you that one. If I put the A there and the F sharp in this original place. So there's lots of solutions to it, but basically my notes are F sharp, A, and C, and I just have to find a way to do it without doubling my F sharp, my altered tone. All right, now take that same 7 chord and add a 7th, and be aware that you're adding either a minor 7th or a diminished 7th. You could add either one. So add a 7th to that chord, which means you have to take one of the doubled notes out and change it to a 7th. And go ahead, see how you do. You're going to find a little trick in this one. This is going to be a little hard. Guys, except for one of you, but because we're coming to the end of the class period, I'm going to finish this off. So to make a 7th, my chord has got to be an F sharp, A, C, and E of some form of E, right? F sharp, A, C, E. So I've got to take one of my A's away and I've got to change it to an E. So how do I do that? Well, one way to do it is I'm going to make the voice leading as smooth as I can. I'm going to change this F sharp to the E. And let's just see how it works. F sharp becomes an E. So now I've got my F sharp up in the soprano, alto, I mean F sharp, A, C, and E. There's my full chord. The E is my seventh. It has to go downward by step. The F sharp, this F sharp is my leading tone. It wants to go up by step. In fact, this leading tone wants to collapse. This one, A to E, is that a fourth? Oh man. So is that gonna give me parallel fifths? It sure is. So I'm gonna have to change one of those notes, so I will. Let's change this one so I don't end up with parallel octaves later on. Anyway, that's not a perfect voice leading. I say this could be problematic, and I thought I had worked it out in my head. I didn't quite. But basically, all you do is take out your double note and make sure you've got all the sevenths, and the seventh resolves downward by step. So that's F, A, C, E. Man, I changed the wrong note. Wow. F sharp, A, C, E, going to the G chord. I'll probably have to change this guy to the B, and then that's going to change, whoops, and that's going to change this chord. So so obviously I can't go up to the B here. So a C there because I'm going to get parallel octaves. So something like that. Anyway, there's your answer. The seventh has to go down by step. The leading tone wants to go up. And that gives you your resolution. So that's a 7/7 of 5. Now, if I wanted to be really fancy, I would have made that in E flat and made it a fully diminished chord because it doesn't matter. And that gives you this beautiful chromatic line, and that's fancy. So if I play that for you, you'll hear it. And then we'll be done for the day. But let me just play it for you. Let's hope you can hear it. Here we go. Play. Ready, play. Epic fail. Okay, let's say one more time for you so you can see it. I'm sorry, you're a little late. My wife is signaling to me. She says, you're late. But I wanted to share sound so you could hear this.
Let those kids go.
I know. I'll just play it quickly play it. Here we go. So you can hear it. And that's it. That's the whole thing. So gives you lots of material to think about, lots of things to practice. I will see you tomorrow for some ear training and Friday for more secondary dominance. Thank you guys. And thanks for your patience for staying a few minutes over. I'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.